Hi, today I'd like to present a new spatially explicit analysis framework that our team at IPRI and the Gender Platform developed together to identify climate, agriculture, and gender inequality hotspots at the subnational level. We know women play a pivotal role in agriculture and food systems, from production to distribution and consumption. While women make up a large proportion of the agricultural labor force, they are faced with various vulnerabilities such as limited access to key resources like land and labor, agricultural input, and financial services, as well as other restricting social barriers that impact their adaptive capacities. Evidence suggests that climate change will exacerbate women's differential vulnerabilities. More research is needed for countries to develop strategies to empower women to manage the risks. However, there is limited sex disaggregated data to support such interdisciplinary research. Hence, our methodological research contributes to the identification of subnational climate, agriculture, and gender inequity hotspots based on high-resolution spatial dataset. We use IPCC risk framework, which defines the risk as the intersection of hazard, vulnerability, and exposure. Similarly, we define the hotspot as the area where gender inequalities are persistent and may get worse under climate change. Thus, policy interventions for gender equalities should be prioritized. For the next three slides, I'd like to briefly introduce three main domains of the data. First, for climate hazard, we developed a proxy indicator on the share of rural population under projected agroclimatic hazard at the subnational level. These four maps show the estimated level of climate hazard at the subnational level across 4 study countries. For the vulnerability due to gender inequalities, we developed a composite index of 4 subnational level indicators, including Gender Development Index, Missing Women Indicator, Violence Against Women, and the prevalence of child marriage. We assumed that these 4 indicators well capture the severity of gender inequalities across our study countries. For the exposure, we used the subnational level labor statistics data from the International Labour Organization, which estimates the share of female labor participation in the production of 6 categories of commodities. These two maps show the example of this data in Bangladesh, showing very different patterns of women's participation. We assume the higher percentage of women participating in specific commodity, the higher exposure to the overall risk. Then we statistically reduce the dimensionality of this indicator from 3 domains to come up with a composite index using the principal component analysis. These maps show examples of Bangladesh for 5 commodity categories at the subnational level. These are still preliminary results, and we are conducting more in-depth situation analysis in each country to further understand the causes of these patterns and validate with literature. I'd like to conclude this presentation with the following remarks. Climate hazard should not be examined in isolation, but jointly with women's vulnerability and exposure. The different vulnerabilities, such as climate hazard, women's exposure to climate hazard, and women's vulnerability due to gender inequalities, overlap each other in complex ways specific to the location and context. The development of a climate, agriculture, gender inequity hotspot mapping methodology can help the identification of high-risk subnational areas where the vulnerabilities most acutely converge. We hope this analysis can help policymakers target gender and climate-responsive agricultural policies. Thanks for your attention.